Hi, and welcome to No War Zone. 2010 has arrived, and it promises to be a year of intense change, maybe even more so than 2009, during which we all witnessed the end of the war. But where do we go from here? What should we ask of our newly elected president later this month? What is our vision for 2010? I spoke with three young people, one working with children, a law student, and an activist, to find out what they want from the coming year. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me on the program today. We're mainly here to discuss your expectations for 2010, but first let me start by asking you about what you feel about 2009. What do you think is the most pressing concern that it leaves us to address this coming year? Dinindu?
Well, 2009 was a turning point in the modern history of Sri Lanka, because the violent conflict which we went through for a couple of decades came to an end, which was absolutely brilliant, which leaves us with a lot of challenges when we are heading into the new decade and when we are heading into 2010. So I think the biggest challenge that we do face in 2010 and when we are looking forward is to see where we are taking the country, which was war-torn for over decades, as I said, in terms of taking the people who were wounded emotionally and physically, and a country's economy which was in tatters, taking all that, rebuilding it, and seeing how we can look forward to the future.
Okay, and Tamian, what do you think?
I agree with what Dinindu says, that it's a turning point actually. More than 3 decades we have been having this war, and if we can look at the young people, they have been the vulnerable group who have really influenced by this war, by all measures, all means. So we have to, they have to be taken up to highest levels by all parties, not only politicians, but all groups.
Okay, and Ziana?
I think in our Sri Lanka, nothing has changed other than that. So particularly the rule of law and the administrations and the decision making, basically politicians.
So now you brought up politicians, and that brings me to my next question. Now we are all a part of a generation that has grown up with the war, and as of mid last year, as we've been talking about, the war ended, and adding to this major change this month, in January, we have presidential elections as well. So what would you like to see the next president bring to Sri Lanka in terms of youth?
I think you should have a long-term vision and long-term decision-making process.
So how do you think we can achieve that?
From, participating all the ethnic group, all the youth, mainly the youth should be taken as serious group, From that only we can achieve, because you all know the youth is not, we think, okay, youth is the future generation of Sri Lanka or something. No, youth is there with you. So you have to make decisions with them.
Dinindu, do you agree?
Yes, I do, and let me quote my best friend when I say this, is young people are not merely the leaders of tomorrow, but the active development partners for today. And that's a fact that a lot of policymakers and legislatures fail to realize, that the young people should become part and parcel of the development and reconstruction processes. And let me kind of go back to the original question, which was, what do I expect from the upcoming presidential polls? Something I would want to see is, when you look back, our generation, we've been a group of people who've been born into the conflict, who grew up with the conflict. But for the people who are growing up today, if they are going to grow up in a situation where there's draconian laws, and if there's continued emergency regulations, and if there's continued violation of civil liberties, the background they're going to grow up in is not going to be much different from where you and I grew up in. So for me, the more tangible thing that I would expect both of them to do, either of them to do rather, once they come into power, is to get rid of all the draconian, hard-hitting, iron-fisted regulation which is there, which severely curtails civil liberties of all of us, and not just young people, but of journalists, of activists, of senior citizens for that matter.
Okay, and Tamian, you work at the Alliance Development Trust.
Yes.
And that's an organization that deals with the rights and protection of children and war-affected and vulnerable children.
Yes.
What do you want to see happening in the coming year in terms of child rights and child protection?
If you could look this situation currently, the Northeast, where there are lot of destructions taken place, and we want to bring up those children and young people as well. Everyone has to be in an equal level where a person is being kept in the South. So the equality should be there.
So your emphasis is on rehabilitation and peace building and reconciliation.
Yes, with justice.
Okay. And Ziana, you are a law student and you recently won an essay competition on anti-corruption. What do you think about young people and how they can get involved in the fight for anti-corruption?
The first thing is, if you want to get rid of the corruption, don't support it. The first thing that we can do is don't support it. Even if you have gone for a kind of do something, get something done, don't, even you have not get done your work, don't give the bribe. Don't cooperate with it. That is the first step that can be taken. The second is, you should be brought up in a society that can give you a kind of sense, no, I'm not agree with this. I'm not cooperating, I'm not supporting this. You should be responsible, you should be answerable to what you do.
So you think it's important for people to be accountable for
For
things
this,
they do,
yeah.
and also for young people to speak out
Yeah.
against corruption.
Yeah.
And speaking of speaking out, Dinidu, you are an activist and also a well-known blogger. So to a lot of young people who are now feeling quite disillusioned because they don't feel that they're being heard, what kind of advice would you give?
I'll just say that complacency is not an option. And what I mean by that is for all of us who look up and say, there's too much corruption, there's too much government wastage, there's too much unnecessary expenditure. Most of us don't realize that it's the tax money that you and I pay which is being spent. So the easiest way would be to stop paying tax money, which is not an option, which is technically legal, which I can't endorse. But then you should question people who spend your money, your hard-earned money, as to why they are spending, and you need to tell them to justify their expenditures. And in that sense, it's young people who actually, and it's not necessarily limited to young people, it's people who are asking questions, who will create that change where people who are spending our money would think twice before they do it. We talk of dictatorships and we talk of how bad dictatorships are. There's no difference in power being concentrated in the hands of 225 plus 1 people if people are not answering questions and if people are not asking the important questions which they need answers for.
Okay, so since we're running out of time, just in one sentence, what's your vision for 2010?
My vision for 2010 would be a much more active civil society where the young people play a very active role and the slow movement towards a lesser government. And what I mean by lesser government is not anarchy, but a step towards lessening the powers of the government and improving the civil liberties of the people.
Okay, Damian?
Yes, reconciliation with justice. There's a saying also by Mother Teresa, if we feel that we don't have peace, it is because just you have forgotten that we are not belong to each other. So it should be a united group where we involve in reconciliation with justice. So we have to bring up them, and the young people, of course, they can.
Okay, and Ziana?
If we can protect the rule of law and make the people aware about their rights and duties, then, and also we can live a society, live in a society that is multi-ethnic, but we don't feel there is any change that you are a Muslim, that you are a Tamil or a Sinhalese.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining me on the program. Thank you.